everyone. So, finally time to do this. Got books. A lot of them. A whole heap and a lot of books. Time and effort. Now, oddly enough, we're not going to start this review with a book that I actually have. I'm kidding. I have it. I can't find it. I've used it so little that it somehow has been misplaced. This book, however, is the one book from the system that I will tell you you don't need in any way, shape, or form. So, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be analyzing each of these books. I'm going to be letting you know which ones you need to play the game, how the game actually is with its system complete, and we're going to start with the worst of the worst. Soviet troops' heads were really tiny. By the way, this is a sponsored video. Anything I have to say, take with a grain of salt. Thank you. This book. Oh dear God. Under no circumstances could I recommend this book. Just flat out. Let's actually see what the inside of it looks like. You get your dead tree stuff. I don't think I'm actually even put. I'm pretty sure I'm not actually in this book, thankfully. Because I start showing up in the other books as someone that they say thank you to, but I'm pretty sure I'm not in this book, thankfully. Why? Because of the aesthetics, any usefulness you would get out of this book are gone. This is painful to look at. This is painful to attempt to read. If this were an actual person writing this, okay, fine. If this was handwritten, I could get behind it. It would be fine. Because it's not, and because this is just someone trying to be a sarcastic asshole, all the useful information in this book is destroyed. I get that it's supposed to be a bad OC made this book. I understand that. But if you had taken this and put it to the side in a little box with the bad OC writing and then had made sure that this was actually usable and not just hard to even look at, that would have been appreciative. But because you didn't do that, important information like zebra wartime history that would be useful to a new player to know and understand, it's just hard to read. There's no version of this that you've done, by the way, that's in any Arial or Sans based font. It's all in Comic Sans, and it just does not work. I didn't want to have to say this, but this book is awful. I get that you wanted your bad Alicorn OC, who's a black and red pirate Alicorn, whose cutie mark makes him good at being a pirate Alicorn. I get that. But you could have done that in an aside and made this new character, new to the setting type of deal, good. Instead, what I'm looking at here, I would rather have to go read Nobilis and play Nobilis than read through this again. Which is why we're going to stop. I don't want this to be a negative video. Diary of a Mary Sue, just straight up, is a book you don't need. Nor would you want. I'm going to have to go find mine. And if I can't find mine, I'm actually going to have to buy another one just to have a complete set of books. But at the end of the day, nah, I'm good. So we're going to move on.
I have seen the top of the mountain, and you will worship me as though I were a god. I regret nothing. I lived as few men dare to dream.
The next book in the system that I kind of think is okay, but you don't actually really need at all, is Hoof to Cuffs. I know that cover is just as hard for me to read as it is for you. I'm holding it up here to now show you the back has words on it. But the moment I do this and there's any form of glare, as a matter of fact, even just looking at it, I can't read this without doing this. Like, this is the range of legibility. And then I have to angle it to get the light on it just right. Like, this is... why? A lot of what this system does is they went for aesthetic over practical use. And I'm going to be honest, it shows that you went that route and you shouldn't have done did that. So, what do I think of Hoof to Cuffs, the martial arts guide? Well, as I said, you don't actually really need this book. It's a great little expansion for the series. I mean, I like the fact that it says our sponsor, but I don't sponsor them, they sponsor me. It's the other way around. Thanks. It's a great little expansion for the series. But it's not something you need, and it doesn't solve any of the problems Melee has. For a start, they once again went for form over function. Diary of a Mary Sue and Hoof to Cuffs do this, and whoever made this decision to go for form over function, please, no, don't do this again, ever. Like this. They wanted this to look like a handwritten book of martial arts in the Equestrian Wasteland. That's cool. This would be fine if this is where this text stopped. It doesn't. The rules are written in this text. What makes it even worse is when I could try to search for something. It says it found endurance mentioned. Look how hard it is for the computer to even search for a phrase. I'm just looking for the initials for endurance. It shouldn't take that long to search for a phrase in a book. Look how hard this is for my computer to even load properly. So, let's go back to the top. The rules, everything in this book is written like this. So here's the fluff for Body Temple. Here's the rules for Body Temple. Now, they actually stop and do change the font to something more legible, but they don't actually change it to something more legible, period. I know for a fact people who have yellow-blue colorblind problems are going to have extreme problems reading this book because it's on a beige background. That beige is going to pop like a freaking disco lantern in their face and make this incredibly hard to read on a computer screen. They're going to have to actually have a physical copy in their hand to be able to read this. Further, It doesn't completely stop with the cursive. Look, I get it. Cursive's cool and all, and how people write when they write script, because they are just writing as fast as possible. But this is not how you should be doing rules. This is terrible. In addition to this, while this adds a bunch of new martial arts styles for characters who want to follow melee and unarmed combat paths, it also adds rule clarifications for the other martial arts styles that were already included in the game. It doesn't add anything of significant weight to the system. It doesn't change the rules in such a way as to help compensate or provide martial arts characters with an ability to get around the shortcomings of martial arts. Which allow me to explain what that means. I'm going to be setting up a quick scenario so you can actually see what I'm talking about using Roll20.net. What this means is, in the event you're in a firefight and you are trying to get your martial arts character to be effective, you're going to find you have some real issues. So, let me set it up and I'll show you. Okay, so in this scenario, we have a group of 4 players. Arcane Gears. And this actually is something that happened. We have Arcane Gears, we have Shining Venture, we have Demo Mare, and we have Mudagi Ali. Mudagi Ali is a melee character. This is an explosives character, and these two are ranged combatants. They're currently pinned down by a bunch of raiders. So, from this position, these 3 can still operate to their full capacity and look for a flanking or an opportunity to break out. Because they can do that. Why? Because they're ranged characters. They're already in cover, so they don't have to move. If they weren't in cover or they were outflanked, they would have to spend 1 action, 15 AP, to move. So, for AP tracking purposes, that's what a ranged character is spending for movement. Then they're attacking. Okay? Now their attacks can wildly vary, but it's going to be between 0 and 40 AP to launch an attack. On average, a character has 70. So if we take the middle ground here of 25, that means on average a character will get off 2 attacks and be able to use the rest of their AP for defense. That's what these 3 characters are doing. Mudagi, who does not have a ranged weapon, must do the following. Spend 15 AP to move. Engage in melee combat with this raider. Regardless if the raider dies or not, he still has to reserve 15 more of his AP to either move into cover here after his turn to give him some protection against the incoming shots, or to move back to his original position. So melee is currently spending 30 AP on movement every turn. On top of that, his attack might consume anywhere from 10 to 50 AP, depending on what attack he uses. If he uses a special attack or special ability, found directly here in Hoof to Cuffs in some cases, that tell you you have to spend extra AP to use them. And he may have to spend 15 more for a parry. Which means he gets 1 attack. It doesn't do anywhere near the damage that, say, Demo Mare's explosives will do, or Arcane Gear's gun will do. It doesn't do anywhere near that damage. And he has to return to cover afterwards. He's spending most of his AP on movement, and just in case someone comes in and gets in melee, because there's a melee raider right here waiting to do the same thing. Melee characters have a huge potential for damage. So if he were to come over here, spend 15 AP, and then use all of his AP to attack, this raider would definitely die. Of that, I have no doubt. And then every other raider who has a ranged weapon is going to shoot at him. No questions asked. And he's just going to get murdered. There's nothing you can do about it. You have a very large potential for damage as a melee character, but you don't have any, most of your AP will consistently be spent defensively, avoiding taking the hits and avoiding taking the damage and avoiding drawing any fire. Now, the other defect with melee characters is literally right here on screen. Wings. If you have wings, great. If you don't, why are you a melee character? Any enemy with wings immediately counters you, because all they have to do is keep flying. I use sevens. So sevens is here, but sevens is 5 meters up. Mudagi can stand here and run around and bark at her. If not for his ranged combat friends, Mudagi is useless. If you do a melee focused party, they're not useful. They can't deal with a flying character. So at which point someone's like, well, I guess I won't be the I won't take melee, but by them not taking melee in a party or campaign that's supposed to focus on melee, they're automatically hurting themselves. The only instance in which this is not the case is using gun kata, which literally is martial arts with pistols and guns. Which is cute, I'm going to fully admit. And again, the martial arts book does this, where it switches to the Comic Sans style cursive. This is actually a legitimate, master of this martial art. This has rule information for the GM. This should not be in this text. These are actual rules that I might want to use or take ideas from. I don't need to constantly have eye strain to read it. You switch it here for just this one line and then switch it right back. The changes in font are hurting the playability of the game itself. So, hoof to cuffs, you don't need it. Straight up. If a player wants to use it, let them. But as a GM and as someone running the game, this is an unnecessary book. So now we've gotten over the bad. Let's get to the decent.
Right. Hate to leap of faith. Not bad, kid.
By decent, I mean a good thing. It's a good book. It's a lock safe. It's, oh my god, why thick? let me show you how thick this is. This is an Xbox controller. It fits inside the book. So take this with a grain of salt. Now, I am going to say up front, this book is not necessary for your game. Straight up. It's not. It adds some great additional perks, some great additional rules, and some great additional pieces. But it's straight up unnecessary. You don't need it. Further, as with the entire system, they have gone for form over function. That was me putting the book down on top of the other book. I didn't drop it from my chair. I dropped it from about 3 inches. That's how thick this is. This book is over 600 pages. Almost 7. This adds some great things that you don't have to come up with yourself, even though the base book encourages you to create your own chems and your own spells and your own armors and your own stuff. It adds a ton of perks for all the characters. It adds perk clarifications. Any perks that were that are in any other books are inside of this book itself. However, the fact that the entire book, printed or online, is done in bubble letters, white on blue, architecture CAD, is not okay. I had to read this. This is incredibly hard to read. Like, it legitimately puts a ton of eye strain on me as a person. However, having read through it, there are some things that are clearly, like, exploitable and crazy, and when you get to certain levels are just like, what in the hell? Such as a character that takes 29 ranks of give no bucks, and then at level 30 takes found a buck, which allows them to auto succeed on every single roll without ever having to roll the dice. Clearly meant as a joke. But there will be people who decide, I'm going to play a level 30 game, and there will be someone who makes that level 30 character. And I really think the point of it is to play from level 1 to 30, only taking lack of bucks, and then finally taking that last piece when you hit level stupid. I.e. some divine revelation or some massive thing happens. I am sad that they didn't add Sunrise's trait here, because Stable Pony gives you a bunch of stuff, and then you have to pick one of these positions in the stable. Well, Sunrise's is pre-war Pony, which was something that we made for the game back when it was in beta, and it never made it in here. So I'm sad it never made it in here. But the fact that they really expanded the traits, they really expanded the perks, they expanded the backgrounds, especially the backgrounds, makes this worth getting if you intend on playing the game for more than one session, for more than one game. If you're playing this repeatedly, or you're getting really deep and making multiple characters for multiple games, this book is great. The fact that the different zebra tribes now all come with different bonuses. Hell yes. I also find it funny that Nyota has a negative to sneak now, even though his sneak is still ridiculous. But he has a nice little bonus to shamanism and alchemy. But hell yes. This is just, it's great if you're going to play more than one game. If you're not going to play if you don't play more than one game, or you're not looking to expand your gaming session after, say, 8 to 10 weeks of playing, that is 8 to 10 game sessions, and you guys are like, yeah, we're going to stick with this. This isn't really something you need to get. And it just goes on, and it is literally, they titled it the Book of Lists for a reason. Because it is that. It is lists. And in some cases, it's lists not very well organized. I understand your organization method for perks, but if you were going to do it like every other game system, which is what people are used to, I'm going to zoom back up. Sorry if this is making a little motion sick for me to zoom back and forth, but the best way I found to display these books is not by opening them and showing you what it looks like physically, but rather by using this. Using the PDF here. Don't display them by race. You should be displaying these perks by level first. And then having a separate, smaller chart that displays them by race. The fact that the races are so drastically different that they need their own perk list is something I can truly appreciate. Like 100%, that's well above and beyond what D&D will ever fucking do. Thank you. But all perks should be displayed in one master list, and then a secondary smaller chart that just displays them by race. So this makes perks very hard to find without having them on a computer where you can control F, which I'm not going to do on this 700 page thick book because it will literally crash Firefox. And I'm displaying these via Firefox instead of showing you my background. However, all of that said, decent job. Decent job. This expands the rules, it clarifies a bunch of the perks, gives you some additional notes, such as right here, washing in filthy water does not count for bathed or showered, which was something in the base book that it didn't show. And having a temporary perk list, just a perk list of things the GM can be like, you get this bonus. Cool. This gives players a motivation to take care of their character. It also gives GMs more ideas for stuff like debuffs. Great. I can appreciate that. Anyway, the additional items, good stuff. The additional chemicals, all of that is good, but it's not required for your game. And that's something to remember. This is not required for your game, and therefore, unless you guys are all going to agree to use this book, and unless you guys are all going to agree that you're going to play for more than 10 sessions, i.e. you get to session 10, I cannot recommend getting this book outright. I can recommend getting it if you want to get deeper into the system and you want to get deeper into the growth of characters. Because one of the really good things about this book, it tells your story via your character's stats as much as your character's roleplay. This book will help you force people who are trying to do stuff strictly by the numbers to actually roleplay it out. All you munchkins out there, this book is it might look like your candy, might look like your coated crack. Boy, this is a GM's dream come true for munchkins. And I mean it. It really is a GM's dream come true to be ready to use on munchkins. Because they're going to go through this book, and they're going to find the best min-maxing craziness they can. And then you get to sit down and say, so tell me, why your character has all of this, and what did they do with it, and how did they get it, and just interrogate the crap out of them and watch the Munchkins squirm uncomfortably as they realize that they have to make a backstory for their items and for their perks and for everything that's on that character sheet, because the backstory for why they have it now matters as much as the item itself. Other than that, great little book. That's all I'm saying on it. We're going to move on to the 3 books you actually need. This is all you need. This is it. I'm dead serious. My hair has lost its structural integrity talking about this system already. This is all you need. Now, why do I say that? Well, because it is. You do not need the other books. You need it. And the staff at DTS will tell you you only need the Wasteland Survival Guide. I will tell you, no. That's not how that works. You need the Overmare's Guide, and you need Gilded Cages. Straight up. So, I'm going to give you a nice little look at each of these books. So there's what the Wasteland Survival Guide looks like. This is the only book in their entire series that I would consider 100% legible. And I've used it so much I've broken the spine. This is the only book that's like that. This book has a bunch of aesthetic choices. Thankfully, it didn't decide to make an aesthetic choice with the actual rules or the words of the rules. Oh wait, they did make a few of those. Crap. And this book, well, it met us halfway. Let's talk about them. Now, the staff of DTS will tell you the Wasteland Survival Guide is all you need. It's not. The problems with the Wasteland Survival Guide that I have. 1, character creation. It shows it like this. What it really means is you'll notice that character creation chapter 1 is spread out over 200 pages. This needs to be reorganized. I'm going to show you a standard RPG organization. And I know Dead Tree is not going to necessarily be happy about this. But here's the Star Wars Revised Core Rulebook. We're going to be playing a Star Wars game here soon. Dead Tree's not happy that I'm advertising we're playing a different game. But I figured I would, show this to show how this is done. Character creation in this book is explained in 1 page. Two pages if you count the further, and then it goes in, and then it goes in to explain what all of that means. What they've done here instead is character creation for this system is spread out over 200 pages. You basically have to read this entire book from start to finish to properly, or you have to have someone who has read the entire book from start to finish to properly make a character. I'm not kidding. Because what they've done is as parts of the character come up that you need to select or make, such as traits, they then immediately list all the traits instead of listing them in a separate section of the book that you flip to and then come back to finish making your character. This has been an irritation with me since the beginning, and it's the reason why my Wasteland Survival Guide has a broken spine. I have played in 8 games that lasted for more than one session. I have played in 4 games that have lasted for multiple months. And I'm currently in 2 games that have been going for more than a year. I know where everything in this book is by picking it up and feeling the book. However, that's because I've done all of that extra work. Listing the rules for perks here and how they work, and then listing all of the perks right afterwards is not a good idea. There's a reason why Dungeons and Dragons lists the rules for feats and skills, and then has a separate chapter for the actual feats and skills themselves. Same thing with equipment. I don't even think I'm pretty sure I'm not to equipment yet. We're going to jump back. We're going to jump back to table of contents. Assuming it wishes to load. Okay. I'm just going to open the PDF and we're going to switch to a desktop capture because this is also a problem I've constantly had with our PDFs. I don't know what you're doing wrong, but this shouldn't happen with your PDF. But it constantly does. Whenever I load their PDF into Firefox or Google Chrome, it does this. So that's something else. I don't know what you did with your data, but that should never happen. Anyway, here we go. Let's stop the review for a second. Open this manually. So, I was right. We were still in skills and description of special talent. We hadn't even got to equipment. But I'll show you skills and special talent. So it explains the rules for skills. And in here, it explains how to create a character's skills. And then it explains all of the skills. If you were going to do a character creation guide as a part of your core book, it should be these first 20 pages. Should just be about how to make a character, not spread out over the entirety of the first 200 pages. And if you think I'm kidding about this being spread out over 200 pages, page 207 is when it finally gives you the formula for determining your total strain as a spellcaster. It also explains how your hit points improve. It explains how to improve skills. The entire character advancement and level up system is here, but you're not actually told how to calculate strain and trick points for spellcasters, alicorns, pegasi, and griffins until you get to page 207. You're still not done making your character, by the way. You have to pick a virtue. And it says this is not critical for gameplay, but required for character development. No, this is absolutely critical. Your virtue determines the very thing that the GM cannot make your character do against your character's virtue. That means I cannot mind control someone whose virtue is honesty to lie. That's an actual gameplay mechanic. It says that it's a minor mechanic. No, this is definitely a major mechanic. Also, karma is a major mechanic, and GM should always remember it and abuse it back and forth with players. When players do something that's clearly evil, they should gain negative karma. When they do something that's clearly good with no self-interest, they should gain positive karma. And disposition, I mean, this is a constant reaction. Like, someone with negative karma isn't necessarily going to be shot at by raiders, but someone with positive karma might be able to get into certain towns that they wouldn't to otherwise. And disposition changes from karma. So now after 209 pages, you will have successfully finished making your first character. This is why I tell you, this game requires someone who's played it before to be able to explain it to you now. It is one of the defects of the game system. However, once you get past all of this, Jesus fuck, this is fun! If you wanted to play something that played like Dark Heresy and had that gritty realism to it, here you go! If you wanted to be able to play a game of Fallout New Vegas on a tabletop, you can throw the pony stuff out and play Fallout New Vegas on tabletop. They're incredibly detailed and incredibly precise. Yeah, by the way, we've gotten past the bad part of this review. We're in the good shit now. I told you we'd get here eventually. It's only been 30 fucking minutes. The game explains opposed roles, and it works very, very well. The game tells you examples of everything you need to know. It goes out of its way to factor in item condition and telling you how to break and repair them. It has a random chart for just what happens to be in box number 4. Oh, it's a sledgehammer. Or GMs can just pick and choose from this chart as they need for random stuff that people find when they open someone's lockbox, or when they walk up to a desk and pull it open and, oh look, there's a Sparkle Cola. Every single possible movement, action is accounted for. If you've ever played D&D 3.0, you know for a fact that jumping in combat was not something they factored in. There is an actual... As much as I want to criticize how melee characters function with the action economy, there is an actually in-depth creation of melee. It includes every aspect of grappling, and grappling is done quickly. Literally, grappling is, both of you make an unarmed check. Who got the better check? Cool. Make a strength check to pin and do damage. That's it. Literally, here's your pin. Described in 2 sentences. Any system that can make grappling not a pain in my ass? Yay. It talks about ranged combat, both shooting at people in the air, shooting at people on the ground, burst fire, full auto, wild shooting, suppression. By the way, we've abused suppressive fire a lot. Special actions that you may need to take, how they work, what's the limits on dodge, what's the limits on reactions, what happens, a specific action that's required to unjam or unglitch a weapon. There's no roll, it's just you have to spend AP, you have to spend time to do it. This is comprehensive. If there has never been an instance in 2+ years of us playing the beta game that we play every Wednesday at 9 o'clock where it was not in the rule book what we should do. We've had to occasionally even modify some of the existing rules as kind of our own, this makes more sense because this is how we've been using it, as opposed to what was actually written in here, because we didn't check to make sure to see if what was written in here was written in here. Yeah, the guy from Dead Tree didn't realize that that was already written into the system. An example is parrying. Because what we've been doing, was for every opponent you wanted to parry, you spent 15 AP. You got an opposed check, which is what is written here in the rules. But it doesn't tell you that that opposed check is against every single attack that your opponent you've chosen to parry makes. That seems unrealistically unfair when you have like 6 opponents on you and you just say, well, I'm just going to spend all my AP to parry, and you literally parry every single attack. So a house rule was made that you could only... I'm getting to this. I'm going to explain this. A house rule was made that you had to spend 15 per attack. That house rule has since been thrown out because the GM forgot that parrying comes with a minus 20 accuracy penalty for the person performing the parry. And that since it's an opposed roll for margin of success, that means that the defender's automatically at a disadvantage. Furthermore, the GM did not realize that they had officially included that if the attacker got a crit success, the defender doesn't win the tie. So now we've changed it back. That actually happened because this is how comprehensive the rules actually are for when you're playing the game. They account for every situation and they're well balanced in most cases. There are a couple things that are unbalanced, as with any game system. Getting through modification, basically until the lock safe had come out with the idea of invention points, and even then if you don't use the lock safe, Earth Ponies are a little unbalanced when it comes to invention and crafting because they can literally just invent anything. If the player can come up with it, the GM literally is encouraged to make rules for it, unless the GM absolutely cannot justify the player having it. Until the Overmare's Guide came out with the idea of chems and drugs, which we're getting to the Overmare's Guide. Until it came out with the idea of how chems and drugs should work, you could just jack yourself up on every drug known and you wouldn't kill yourself. Now, since that's been changed with the Overmare's Guide, applying a limit to the number of drugs that you can have in your system at one time. And until... Well, here is the one thing I will say about this entire system. The spirit favors are a bit neglected without the lock safe. Like, they're very basic, they just feel like the difference between spirit and unicorn magic just kind of feels like spirits are there for permanent enchantments and unicorn magic is used for rapid fire spells. So take this with a grain of salt. There should be some more active spirit magic, and it is available in the lock safe. Pegasus tricks are balanced in the amount of AP that has to be spent in order to get them to work, and in the conditions that are required to get them to function. Spells. Most spells are balanced for what they do. Telekinesis is very much a balanced set of spells and set of capabilities that put the advantage firmly outside of the magic user and into the person who's physically wielding the object, such as the gun, or physically wielding the melee weapon when they try to use this for disarm. Also, the person who's wearing heavy armor just straight up can't be choked, things like that. Eldritch Knives is a bit overpowered. Even though it requires you to cast it twice in order to actually fire the spell, it's still overpowered in the fact that it ignores half DT and the massive amount of damage it is capable of doing if you elect to be a one-trick and you want an offensive spell, Eldritch Knives, or you just Mighty Spell 1 this repeatedly with high potency. This just hurts. All the different energy strikes are fairly well balanced except cold. A reason being, I'm going to show this. This right here. I could see it taking away some AP, but adding 10 AP for every action while you're under the effect with no counter. You don't get an endurance check against this. It just is a straight debuff. There's no counter, there's no endurance check, there's nothing. And on the basic, it requires a critical hit. That's fair. On the advanced, it's just if you get hit by it. And it can be an AoE. Like, this one is definitely overpowered, and out of all of the potential energy strike spells, this is the one that I just like straight up go, why? Because I will give you a direct example. Lightning has a chance of paralyzing on a critical hit, but it only has a chance of paralyzing a machine or archaeotech device, and paralyzing a living opponent, they just have to make a successful luck check. It's one of the reasons, again, luck is not a dump stat. This system goes out of its way to make sure none of your specials are dump stats. Luck especially. I've seen people turn luck into a dump stat and then get ragged on and regret it every single game session. But the fact that it just straight up, that cold strike just straight up doesn't give a save, this is a problem. There's no defense. And there's no limit. If two different sources of energy strike cold hit the same target, all their actions cost 28 more AP. If three different sources, 30 AP. We're all reapplying the debuff over and over again. It basically makes it impossible to do anything. The second spell, now the rest of these spells, even Petrify, really high level spell, fairly balanced. However, a stone target has a DT of 40. He has to, so the caster has to make an arcane check for a start. And then the receiving end gets a constant will check and an opposed endurance check over and over again. And it takes 3 full turns of casting this to actually petrify a target. That means if you're interrupted, the spell loses its effect. This is effectively a death spell, though, but it requires a whole lot of effort. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm even okay with Telekinetic Bullet because it requires so much AP to fire an expert level spell. It requires 50 strain straight out. And the damage it does is great and all, but at the level you're going to have this, people are going to be rocking 50 plus DT. So they're still getting 25 DT, and people are going to be rocking anywhere from 25% to 70% damage reduction. So this is still, and they're going to be rocking at least 200 hit points. This is not a spell that will kill anyone fast enough by the time you can get access to it. The spell, however, that I have the most problem with is shield. Not Alicorn shield, regular shield. There's a very important reason why. It's because of how it receives damage. Attacks which strike the shield and deal more than the shield's DT and damage Deal half that damage to the shield HP before applying the remaining damage to any target behind the shield. Whoever came up with this should be shot for game balance purposes. This doesn't work. What this means is breaking a shield can require upwards of 4 times its effective HP and damage before it breaks. On top of that, the damage applied to the characters on the other side of the shield is cut in half and then reduced by their own DT and DR. And then it finally applies to their hit points. What you're looking at is the World of Darkness car window. For those of you who don't know what the World of Darkness car window is, I'm gonna explain this shit. Hold on. So this has been one of the most hilarious, most mocked things ever put into a game system. And there hasn't been a new World of Darkness version to fix it. So, World of Darkness, WAD Edition. On page 185. So you know I'm not making this shit up. I'm going to read this. The storyteller's dice. So when firing through a car window with a fully automatic submachine gun, the storyteller's dice pool starts with a dexterity of 2, firearms of 3, the gun's damage rating of 2, and 3 for the long burst. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 dice. Targeting the window imposes a -1 penalty due to the window having armor. Okay. The attacker rolls their dice and get 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 10. That's 3 successes. The 2 10s are rolled again and come up 3 and 9. Total of 4 successes. The window has a durability of 1. Size of 3, structure 4. The 4 successes exceed the durability score by 3. That means 3 dice are now re-rolled as a separate dice pool to see if David inside the car actually suffers any harm. So, gonna need some dice here because I need a visual aid for this stupidity to show you how dumb this shield mechanic is. So here's my original dice pool for shooting someone with a fully automatic weapon. They happen to be driving in a car. Reroll 10s. Doesn't succeed. So I got 3 successes. The window has 1 armor. I now have 2 dice that actually get to shoot at the person inside the car. I can't, in this game system, focus the shield to break it. Half of the damage gets through, and the other half is applied to the shield. This effectively means the shield is providing the character with DR 50. I can't focus fire the shield and break the shield. This should either be the shield takes all the damage or the shield is penetrated by the attack and doesn't do anything. Or the shield, simply stating the shield provides a layer of extra HP and DT to the target would have made more sense. This is the one aspect out of all of the magical spells available that I horrendously hate. It makes this spell so overpowered that there's no reason to not take it. Instead of, this is the magic missile of the system. Every other spell here is less powerful. And it shows. I love it though. I gotta say, with other than Energy Strike, Cold, and Shield, I love the spells in this system. Some of them are downright hilariously fun. Stuff like Bonds of Friendship, and everybody seems to think it's just a joke. Except for being considered adjacent is important. It means I can heal your butt regardless of where we're standing. So, what I'm saying is, great job on Magic. You've got 2 spells that need some changes, and then you've got about 50 plus spells that are perfectly made. Anesthetic. Duration 1 hour on a willing or unconscious subject. On an unwilling patient, target must roll agility -2 for every action they perform during the potency amount of turns. The target suffers -10 to all skill checks. Does not work on Cyber Ponies, rank 2. Great stun spell. It's very well balanced. The target has chances to resist over and over again. And target has chances to dodge. Overall, this system of spells and the fact that you can learn any of them and you're not restricted and you don't have to do preparation, you just cast until you run out of strain, is amazing. It is absolutely amazingly well done. I could not design a better spell system if I wanted to. I went through the ridiculous example of to show you the shield spell and the problem with it. But I felt like I had to do that to show it. The fact that the rest of these spells work perfectly is astounding to me. Brav fucking oh. Good job. Now, we're going to get into the next book that is absolutely essential. I mean this in every way, shape, and form. You have to have this. There's no getting around it. There's no... As much as Dead Tree Studios wants to say that the Wasteland Survival Guide is the only book you need, no, you need this. There's a variety of reasons. So for a start, I want to say thank you for listing me as a sponsor, even though I'm not. You sponsor me. It's the other way around. You listed it wrong. You're gonna have to deal with this aesthetic. the bloodstains and the angry overmare writing stuff out like this. You're going to have to deal with this. It's not ideal, but it's not so overt like the other books that it makes it unreadable. The fact that you chose a font that's incredibly legible on what mostly white paper, you did add the staining, which is a great effect, I gotta say. If somebody had to manually go in here and add the staining, by the way, it's not like the same staining every page. This is a great effect. And this is the, if you wanted to create a system that had form and function, this is the one book where you did it right. So congrats to whoever came up with this. You did it right. And this adds a bunch of information for the GM. It also adds some additional rules. And those additional rules are important. Explains how to build proper villains, how to build proper adversaries, how to build proper enemies that can last multiple sessions. It explains the different alcohols. Although this is one of the times during the aesthetic that I wanted to complain, but I'm not going to. I'm going to let this go. It explains going beyond level 30. If you want to become a legend of the wasteland, here's how to do it. Sanity. They made this after the Call of Cthulhu style sanity system. You get a number of points equal to int plus charisma, and then you have mundane loss, dire loss, arcane loss, eldritch loss, and the effects of going mad. You know what though? I gotta admit, some of the effects of going mad are great, and then the effects of going completely batshit are bad. It tells DMs to fudge rules. It's okay. It encourages this. It encourages making a ruling and then writing it down so that from now on, it's fine. It tells DMs to say no. It tells you to say no. And then, instead of just dampening their enthusiasm, give them an alternative while you allow them a short recess as you figure out the alternative. This is one of the most encouraging Dungeon Master books I've ever read. It's not just about rules. It's a guide of how to be a GM. And it's short. It's only 100 pages. Rules included. And it calls GMing what it is. Cat herding. And it doesn't and the other important thing is this is one of the few books where it doesn't mix the hard rules, i.e. sanity. It's right here in its own separate section. And then it gets into the GM rule fudging stuff. It doesn't mix the hard rules with the GM advice. It spreads them out. It creates separate sections, as you should create separate sections. This was designed by someone who looked at how gaming books are generally designed and understood why they were designed that way. Also, I'm going to say this for Ivana. Whoever made this joke, fuck you! Buddy was great! But I genuinely found this a pleasure to read, and I found this a pleasure to use. The book is not overly thick. It's easy to pick up. It's easy to understand. It's easy to use. It's not attempting to be a comprehensive system. It's just attempting to be the guide for the person running the game. And for the people who are playing, this is also an important guide for what the GM is going through. It creates a better understanding between player and game master to have both of them just read through this book, and you can skip the charts and just read the sections that are important. This also gives a much more comprehensive chart for awarding players loot and random scavenge pieces in the wasteland. And then finally, when this book came out, I was so happy for one particular section. This one. Those of you who don't know what this is the hazard section. So I skipped past it while I was talking. Falling, all of it's put in one nice, neat place. And I can appreciate that. Just straight up. And lastly, the section that everyone wants to look at starts on page 69. You did that on purpose to get me to say giggity. Taint. And the taint chart. The actual effects of taint. And it is encouraged that you use some of these actual effects of taint for the occasional radioactive mutation. I'm okay with that. It explains how gems work and how they can be used to create sparkle energy for your various pieces of equipment. That's something that wasn't even explained in the book of lists. I truly appreciate the person who made this book. And lastly, what can be considered magic items or legendary weapon effects in Fallout. They're listed here. And you're encouraged. You're actually encouraged to make more of them. You're told to make more of them that are listed here in this book. These are just the suggestions they have for you as a GM. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And then, of course, MacGuffins, quest items, and like I said, this book is a treasure. If you're going to play Fallout, you need a book like this, Overmare's Guide. You need the Overseer's Guide, or whatever you want to call it. And the fact that this is the one book, this is one of two books in the entire system where they integrated the form into the function rather than trying to make the function integrated into the form, means it's the one book that I have no problem with at all. None whatsoever. This was a joy to read. This was encouraging to read. This was put into a proper order, and clearly whoever scripted this book out knew exactly what they were doing for making a game system. Thank you. Now, we get to the last essential book. The Gilded Cage is the monster manual of this system. It is the, as some people would call it, the waifu book. Outside looks great. It actually does look great, and this is the one book that I don't feel like the cover is necessarily that flimsy. The other books, I have questions about the cover and their integrity, it's been shown with my Wasteland Survival Guide after 2 years of use. Like, I really use that book a lot, hence why the spine's broken. That's fair. After 2+ years of use, I kind of expected the spine to not hold out. This, however, this and the Overmare's Guide are the two most solid books that they've made as far as like cover design and page and everything. And I don't actually expect these books to break unless I actually do something that makes them break. But let's get into the Gilded Cage. Now, for a start, yeah. Gilded Cage is only 210 pages long. That's fair. The Gilded Cage is doing that form over function thing, and I don't like it. This actually explains the different threat levels. This is explaining to GMs how to use this book. It is written in a way that is unappealing to read, and I'm going to be entirely honest, it is printed in a way that looks like it came from an 8th grader's notes in a notebook. This is a printed book. This is what it looks like on the inside of the printed book. I'm unhappy with this. I don't know if Moon made this decision or if this is another L9 decision to design the book this way. I'm really hoping it's not Moon's decision to design the book this way, and this is why he's been driven so insane. But this is, again, this is my complaint. Now, my happiness comes from the fact that the book is designed to where it's actually kind of good. What they did was they gave a brief description here, which is in this god-awful font. And then the actual hard rules area, right here, is not. Thankfully. Name of the creature, its threat level is not. Threat level is basically challenge rating. Its other stats are, but I can get over that now because they're blocked off. Where I can clearly see they're blocked off. You just did this with the Mary Sue guide. I wouldn't be so upset about it. And this game is designed to where, as much as I hate Cazadors with an absolute burning fury of hell, you could run an entire campaign fighting nothing but Cazadors if you're a sadistic asshole. You can run an entire campaign fighting various wildlife, and it would be doable. You have entire campaign settings ready to go. Entire missions that are about nothing but dealing with giant mutated ants, mantises, and whatever else you can come up with. There's an actual version of the Rad Roach that will murderate you. I'm okay with this. There are versions of the Rad Scorpion that aren't that hard to deal with. And then there are versions of the Rad Scorpion that are fuck, piss my pants, hard to deal with. Don't run into the albino Rad Scorpion. You don't wanna. And it just goes on, and so it does all the insects, it does all of the various mammal creatures. You should never have to build another creature ever again if you don't want to. If you want to pick up and play, you need this book, because unlike the Wasteland Survival Guide that only has a couple of examples, this has a lot. And more importantly, and this is something that I gotta say, whoever did these, thank you. The artwork in this book is the only book where the artwork is something that I find a joy to look at. This cute little manticore cub is fucking adorable. And it's drawn so I can see clearly it is a manticore cub. The fact that this is not a rip from the show, but someone lovingly recreating the image of the manticore from the show, I'm with it. Like, this is the first book where the art in the book is something I can stand beside and go, I would be proud to call this artwork in my book. So whoever drew this, thank you. The rest of the artwork in the other books, it could use some work. There are parts, particularly like in the Diary of Mary Sue, where just looking at some of the artwork, it's hard to tell what it is. Not here. And it goes on. And just when you get past, I forget where, but there's a good portion before you even get past wildlife. But once you get past wildlife and get into supernatural beasts, you get into things like Cerberus. Cerberus is, well, he's going to murder you. But he's built in case you want to use him. Feral ghouls of all sorts, including the glowing ones and the Cantrolot version. Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. Every single version horror that could be in the Wasteland is here, and they don't pull any punches. Tongue tentacles. That's all I'm gonna say. Tongue tentacles. Yeah. Yeah. And they don't pull punches. They tell you what these things do. They instead violate them with their mouth tentacles and impregnate them. It is the birthing of new horrors which kill the victim. They don't pull any punches. They're not afraid of anything in this system. This is clearly made for adults, and I like it. And again, that's a good thing. And then you get into the robot section and you realize that there's a whole lot of robots you didn't account for, and they go out of their way to show a bona fide version of every single robot that's in Fallout. That is what a Sentinel bot looks like in Fallout Equestria. That's what a Sprite bot looks like. And then they have ones they just made up, and that's okay. So at the end of the day, this book is not only required, I don't quite think the function is made before the form, especially when you have like text like this that's explaining to you how to make a monster. But it's a very nice compromise compared to, say, Diary of a Mary Sue or The Locked Safe. And lastly, you have the monster perks, and there's even a way to run a monster-based campaign. So, all of this said, all of this thought out, what I recommend this game system. Yes, I would. With the caveat, you're going to need to be ready to ask some questions. The players are going to have to do some reading. And you're probably going to want someone who's played it before to play it with you. And even then, they're not going to know everything they need to know. So, that said, yeah, I can't even find my copy of Diary of Mary Sue. That's how little I've used and opened it. I can't even find it anymore. These 3 books, Wasteland Survival Guide, Overmare, Gilded Cage, you have to have them. So this is a $100 investment if you want the physical copies, or I think it's a $15 investment if you want digital. You have to have them though. That's a price point I can kind of be okay with. I don't like that there's no printable character sheet. So you have to fill out a character sheet digitally. But these 3 books, actually I stand corrected. So the Wasteland Survival Guide is $5. The Overmare's Guide and the Gilded Cage will run you an additional $35. So $40 is the minimum buy-in for a digital version. Physical version, well, the books are going to run you $40 each, and the lock safe's going to run you $60. And the biggest issue I have with the way they've distributed these is the 3 books you need are these 3. But they haven't put those 3 together in a in a bundle that you can buy for cheaper. And this is one of the issues I have with them as a company. You need these 3 books to run any game you want to run. You need Overmare's Guide, obviously, for the expanded rules, the GM, the sanity rules, all of that stuff. You need the Wasteland Survival Guide to build characters, period. You need the Gilded Cage as the game master at the very minimum just to have a bestiary. World building kit. Gilded Cage, Wasteland Survival Guide, lock safe. Game Master Special. Overmare's Guide, Wasteland Survival Guide, locked safe. The locked safe is not useful to the Game Master for them to Game Master. They need the bestiary. Veteran Wastelanders Kit. This assumes you already have this book. That's good. And that would get you the 4 books that I can absolutely 100% recommend. This book is a cursed item that should just be burned. But at the end of the day, I have thoroughly enjoyed playing this system. I've been doing some reading on the Changeling Race Guide. I'm waiting for the Bat Pony Guide to be sent to me to do some reading on it. But these 2 additional race guides, I will be doing a separate video on later next year. The rest of these books, I mean, I've had 2 years plus of fun with this system and am continuing to have fun with it. I want to have more fun with it. And honestly, I might, on my next character, just open the lock safe and just use it exclusively to make the character. I'm that deep into the system. But for anyone new, as a $40 investment, this is a good investment. If you're going to be playing, if you want to play Fallout Equestria, if you want to play a Fallout tabletop game, because they don't exist yet right now. Matter of fact, I'm going to do a quick search. Fallout tabletop RPG. It doesn't exist yet. The couple that do are not supported, unofficial, like this. Do you know when this was released? This was released over a decade ago, and it uses D12s. And this limited edition thing here, you still need this base book for. And this is not a good system. It's awful. It is god awful. Straight up. This is legitimately a better Fallout system. And since it was designed exclusively for that, using the core tenets that you would find in a Warhammer 40k role-playing system that they've been using for 2 decades. 2, 3, 4 decades. They've been using it since the 80s. I keep thinking it's the early 2000s. It's almost 2020. I'm doing this review to get it out before Christmas. This is good. I know that at the start of this video, I registered all of my complaints. In the middle of the video, I registered my one complaint here. And now at the end, I'm going to tell you to your face, they pulled it out. The Gilded Cage and the Overmare's Guide are great compromises for the form they were going for and the actual function of the game system themselves. Well away from what they had with the Mary Sue as their first expansion. The Martial Arts Guide is okay, but it's completely unnecessary. The lock safe is great for rules clarifications, but mostly it's only there if this is your second game or your third game. Race expansions, I'm imagining, are going to be there for this is your third or fourth game. It's time to go have a look. In the meantime, this has been Fiaura. Thank you guys for the patience, because I know it's been a month and a half, 2 months since I released a game review or a science video. There's a reason. It's because I was reading all of this. This was not a short read. For me to still be doing my writing for Fallout Equestria Dead Tree, and for me to be organizing an audiobook, to get through all of this took 2 months, and then it took 2 months to properly put my thoughts together. To properly make sure I had scripted this out took a week. This was not an easy undertaking by any stretch of the imagination. This was long, hard, and painful. But I'm happy with these 3 books. 100%, well, 90% happy. Wasteland Survival Guide I have some issues with, and the form of the Gilded Cage I have some issues with, but the actual books themselves, the artwork in the Gilded Cage is much better than any artwork present in the rest of the system, and I can truly appreciate the effort put in to get that ready, and the time and effort it took to make sure that all of those creatures were play tested properly, because even now, using the bestiary, and this is important, those creatures were clearly properly play tested. Thank you. I look forward to continuing to stream this system. I look forward to playing this more. I'll get to the race guides sometime next month. In the meantime, enjoy your holidays. And I have to say some thank yous specifically to some of my patrons real quick, so we're going to get that out of the way. Let's see here. I would like to say specifically thank you to Chroma Slip, Jeffrey Perigo, the Phoenix Lord aka Captain, and Fop Doodle, as well as who are currently my $100 full commissar of Slaanesh champions and my $50 commissar patrons. Furthermore, I would like to say thank you to my $25 tier patrons, the First In Boys, Sundancer, Drinking Buddy, and Carl Bragison. Everyone else who's a patron, you're awesome. Thank you for your help, thank you for your patrons, and thank you for continuing to support me. I truly appreciate it. And the Patreon money is specifically useful towards the audiobook right now, because it's expensive to get an audiobook done. You have to pay a ton of voice actors. So if you guys want to support work like this, where I'm sitting around reading an entire game system for 2 months, formulating all the thoughts on it, and then spending a week and a half writing this review, support me on Patreon. And if you look forward to the audiobook for Fallout Equestria Dead Tree, really, truly support me on Patreon, because we need all the help we can get, especially when we're trying to pull in major voice talent. I'll see you guys on Wednesday night for Fallout Equestria Dead Tree, but in the meantime, I'll see you for Christmas Eve and the day after. Have a very wonderful holidays, whatever you celebrate, and I hope that I see you at my house next year.